If you think safety lives in the shape of a neighborhood, this story will argue with you. A late summer evening in Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind that holds onto heat after sundown and turns the glass of apartment towers into a string of soft oranges. The Lynx Blue Line slides through South End, doors chiming, commuters drifting in with backpacks and takeout bags, phone screens glow-lighting every face. It's ordinary in the way big city evenings are ordinary. Everyone inside is a quiet planet in their own orbit. Among them is Irina Zarutska, 23. She's small, quick, practical. There's flour in the seams of her shoes from the end of a shift. She's learned the schedule by heart. Step on at East/West Boulevard. Ride a few stops. Think about the English homework waiting at home. The train shivers, settles, and Irina chooses a seat the way most of us do, without thinking it has anything to do with life or death. Before we go forward, go back. Kyiv, Ukraine. Sirens. Weeks of shelter. A family condensed into a small room and a smaller routine. Water, bread, messages from friends you answer with thumbs that won't stop shaking. In 2022, Irina crossed an ocean with her mother, sister, and younger brother. Her father stayed. The law and a war said men his age don't leave. In North Carolina, Irina started over the way refugees always do. One task at a time, a job, a bus route, a classroom where she sits a row from the front because that's where courage feels like a habit. A boyfriend who teaches her how to drive because owning a car is a kind of American grammar no one back home ever had to learn. She's studying art and restoration again, trying to stitch her first love into a new life. That's who is on this train, not a headline. A young woman who has done everything right for 2 years, work, study, help family, laugh when she can. August 22, 2025. Cameras in the station do what cameras do. They watch without blinking. In the footage, Irina steps aboard and sits. She doesn't know the man who will take the seat behind her. She doesn't talk to him. She doesn't look back. 4 minutes pass. The length of a song, a voice memo, a grocery list texted to your roommate. Then, the man leans forward. A motion sharp enough to tear a world in half. A pocket knife, pulled from a hoodie. 3 quick strikes, at least one to the neck. Violence from behind, the most cowardly angle a human being can choose. The train doesn't know how to react. Machines are stupid that way. Pendulum smooth, it hums toward the next platform while the life of a 23-year-old tries to hold the line between consciousness and collapse. There are other riders. Some see, some don't, some freeze, some move. The car is a study in everything we are under pressure. Startled, brave, late, human. The doors open. The man steps off. Officers are already nearby. On board, 1 car ahead and on the platform as the scene dislocates. They close the distance in seconds and arrest him. He has a hand wound. He looks like men look after they do violence. Smaller, suddenly, than the damage they've done. His name will be learned and repeated and spelled a dozen ways in early posts and broadcasts. DeCarlos, Brown Jr., 34. The police do not give a motive. They move him out. They start the clock. Inside the car, the air changes. Witnesses go from mute to kinetic. A passenger kneels. Another calls. A third looks around for help and finds a camera lens instead. Irina tries to stay with the people talking to her, tries to answer, tries to breathe past the sound her body is making. A minute stretches, then another. She goes unresponsive. Paramedics can't pull her back. On a light rail floor in the center of a safe, modern city, a woman who survived missiles and basements and border control dies because a stranger decided to be a knife. News moves faster than grief. A push alert, a clip, a caption that compresses everything to the length a thumb can read between stops. But the story won't fit in a headline, and you know that already. Because once you know the pieces, the timing hurts differently. She had just gotten off work. She chose a seat at random. She did not know him. She was stabbed from behind. She bled out before anyone could get her to a hospital. She'd been in the United States for 3 years. She was 23. By midnight, Charlotte is 2 cities, one where people sleep and one where people go online to demand a reason. The mayor calls it senseless. Transit officials say protocol was followed. Operator held the train. Police on scene. Investigation active. Commentators turn the crime into the first ingredient of whatever argument they were already cooking. Security, fair enforcement, mental health, repeat offenders, immigration, cameras, guards, guns. Some of that is necessary. All of it is noisy. What's quiet is what matters. A mother on a couch she can't get off, a sister writing a text she won't send, a boyfriend scrolling to a video he should never have to see because in 2025, awful things come with playback. In Charlotte, Chanchomia Free Charitin, strangers gather with candles at the station where the doors opened and the night changed. They say a name out loud because names fight erasure better than statistics. The investigation, meanwhile, does what investigations do: collect, verify, slow the narrative down until it can carry its own weight. The suspect is booked into Mecklenburg County detention. A judge orders a mental health evaluation. A state murder charge goes on the board, first degree, and then a federal charge follows for committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system, the kind of statute that exists for crimes exactly like this one. Violence on transit that crosses into national interest. The legal system begins its careful walk, and the city begins its messy one. In the days ahead, you'll hear the other defining details. That Irina loved to cook, that she played cards and videos friends will keep forever now. That she had started to love Charlotte and said so. That her father could not make it to her funeral because war has long fingers and borders, even for grief. That governance meetings will use her name as a point on an agenda about security staffing and fare checks and cameras, because policy people only have 2 tools, money and rules. Both will move, but none of that belongs in this first chapter except as weather on the horizon. For now, hold on to the simplest picture: a young woman in a clean shirt on a light rail car, a shift behind her and schoolwork ahead, a city she is trying to make into a home. A stranger who brought a knife onto public transit and ended a life that had already dodged more danger than most of us ever will. The rest of this series won't turn Irina into an object lesson. It will keep her at the center while we trace what the footage shows, what the arrest means, what the charges signal, and how the people who loved her are supposed to go on when the map they built in 3 years has just been torn in half. Trains make us trust time. The doors open, the doors close, the car hums forward, and all you have to do is stay in your seat until your stop. That promise held on the Lynx Blue Line every day. Until the night it didn't. It begins so simply, you could miss it while checking a text. 9:50 p.m., August 22nd. Surveillance video catches the slice of a moment we've all lived. A rider steps on, picks a seat, looks down. Irina takes the aisle, mid-car. Behind her by the window, a man settles in wearing an orange hoodie. There's no conversation, no recognition, nothing that looks like prelude. The car glides out of East/West Boulevard, as if the rails could guarantee the morals of their riders. Inside the footage, the camera doesn't blink. That's what cameras are for. 4 minutes pass. Not loudly, not quietly, just the way minutes pass when a city is pretending to be safe. Then the man behind Irina leans forward. His right hand lifts. A pocket knife appears. There's no warning, no words. Just 3 fast strikes from behind. At least one to the neck. Violence designed to be silent and terminal. Shock has a sound. And if you've never heard it, be glad. The people nearby move and don't move at the same time. One rider flinches, another freezes. A third lifts a phone as if the modern world could solve this with a better angle. Irina grabs at her throat and tries to stand. For nearly a minute, she's half up, half down, her body insisting on life, while blood insists on physics. No one should have to watch this. But we live in a century that records everything, long after we're done learning from it. The operator gets the call. Hold at the next platform. Call police. Protocol eats panic. That's the point of protocol. In this city, on this line, officers ride trains and stand on platforms, a moving presence meant to make the system feel like a place where rules rule. Tonight they matter because speed matters. The car eases into the platform and the doors part. The man in the orange hoodie steps off like any commuter who has reached his stop, except that the stop he meant to reach was after he'd made sure a 23-year-old would not reach hers. On the platform, officers close distance and take him down. De Carlos, Brown Jr., 34. He has a cut on his hand. The kind you get when you use a small blade the wrong way in a hurry. He doesn't give a motive. He barely gives a face. The camera and the cuffs do most of the talking. Back inside the car, the ordinary heroes begin. A rider kneels to keep Irina with them. Another presses fabric against skin because we all learned the basic math of bleeding from the worst headlines of the last decade. Someone is crying. Someone is yelling. Someone is repeating a sentence to the emptiest air in the world. Stay with us. The transit radio asks for medics. The medics come. They're perfect and they're too late. The human body can be magnificent. It can also be measured in terrible minutes. On a light rail floor, in a city that advertises itself as modern and safe, a woman who learned to sleep through air raid sirens dies from a knife. By midnight, the video is a rumor. By morning, it's a clip. Edited, blurred, warning labels everywhere, and still too much. People watch it because that's what people do now, bear witness at a distance. Some are angry at the passengers for not turning the car into a vigilante movie. Others are angry at the system because it promises presence and can't be everywhere. The train had officers aboard, one car ahead, and on the platform. They ran. They arrested. It wasn't enough. Nothing would have been enough after the first cut landed. This is not absolution. It's geometry. The affidavit adds the sterile lines that courts require. No interaction before the attack. 3 stabs, throat wounds. Arrest within minutes. The facts are simple, which is why they're so hard to live with. Simple means preventable. Simple means no feud, no robbery, no argument about a seat or a glance. Simple means a stranger brought a knife and chose. In the days right after, the city's ritual arrives like weather fronts. Transit announces visible security increases, more uniformed presence, more fare checks, a review of where officers ride and when. Police hold a podium and repeat the part that matters. We had people on scene, we moved fast, we made an arrest. The mayor calls the killing senseless and promises an examination of gaps, response times, staffing, blind spots, and cars that carry no onboard guards. State and federal officials step in with their own vocabulary, jurisdiction, statutes, resources. It is both sincere and rehearsed, because this isn't the first city to learn that trains are only as safe as the worst person who boards them. The charges start stacking. The state files first-degree murder. A judge orders a mental health evaluation and no bond. Then the feds do what the law lets them do when violence hits a system that moves the public. They file under 18 U.S.C. Section 1992, the statute that treats attacks on mass transportation as offenses of national concern. That charge carries life, or even the death penalty. And reporters say the words the way you always say words you hope you won't have to say again. A grand jury returns an indictment. Paper has a way of proving that a city has a spine. Meanwhile, the footage becomes a kind of civic Rorschach. Some see evidence for more transit police. Others see a case for random screening or closed cars after hours. Some want fare gates that make it harder for people with weapons to breeze on and off. Transit planners start drawing heat maps of incidents, arguing about where to place officers so they don't just stand at stations but also ride into the moments that matter. You'll hear about pilot programs and funding votes and task forces because in America, our grief is both personal and procedural. The part that shouldn't get lost is small and human. Irina is not an argument. She is a person who cooked for friends, studied art, worked a food job, learned English, loved a city. She did what we ask newcomers to do: show up, contribute, build. Her father can't come to the funeral because war has its own chains. Her sister and mother accept neighbors' casseroles and strangers' flowers, and the impossible obligation to answer, "How are you?" when there is no honest answer that fits in a hallway or on a sidewalk. And then there's this. The arrest came minutes after the doors opened. That is not victory, it is containment. It ensured there would be no confused days of composite sketches and rumors about motives. It meant a name and a booking photo and a pair of handcuffs replacing a void. It gave the law something to hold on to. That matters because ambiguity is its own kind of violence. Families live in it. Cities breathe it. The faster you replace it with facts, the sooner everyone can decide what to do next. What comes next for the case is both familiar and fierce. Arraignments, motions, competency hearings, 2 tracks, state and federal, moving at different speeds, but toward the same question. How do you measure a life taken on a train? Prosecutors will present video, eyewitnesses, and the knife if it's recovered. They will talk about intent written in the angle of a blade. Defense attorneys will do the job the Constitution gives them: test the evidence, probe the defendant's mental state, interrogate security failures that might move a jury's heart, if not its duty. The court will keep the volume down so that proof can be heard. None of that changes the basic lesson of those 4 minutes. Trains don't guarantee anything. Safety isn't the metal box. It's the culture we build around it. How we staff, how we respond, how we hold one another accountable for the space we share. You can make that culture stronger with badges and budgets, but in the end, it's also neighbors and norms. Sit where you can see, help when you can help, call when you need to call. Refuse the comfortable lie that danger only looks like one kind of person. Courtrooms don't care about outrage. They care about elements. The checklist the law demands before it will let a verdict stand. In the case of Irina Zarutska, those elements split into 2 lanes moving side by side: North Carolina first-degree murder in state court, and a federal charge for committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system. State first. In North Carolina, first-degree murder can rest on premeditation and deliberation, or on certain felony murder theories. Prosecutors don't need a manifesto. They need intent proven by actions and seconds: a weapon readied, a choice to strike, the target chosen, the direction of the blows, the escape attempted. In the video, the state says those seconds are right there. No interaction, 3 fast stabs from behind, at least 1 to the neck, a wound no one survives without a miracle. Intent lives in that timeline. Deliberation doesn't have to mean minutes of thinking. It can be measured in the time it takes a hand to reach a pocket and open a blade. The federal lane has its own vocabulary. Title 18, U.S.C. Section 1992 treats violence on transit as a national offense. For the government, the elements are technical but clear. A person willfully commits an act on a mass transportation system that causes death. The link's blue line qualifies. The act, the stabbing, caused death. The statute's penalties are severe, up to life, and in cases like this, the death penalty is legally available. Whether it is sought is a decision that comes later, after formal procedures inside the Justice Department. For now, the important part is that the charge exists and carries a weight the city can feel. Before any jury hears a word, judges do their own quiet triage. In state court, the first hearings handle probable cause, arraignment, bond, here, none, and, crucially, competency. A judge ordered the defendant to a mental health evaluation. Competency is not a verdict on guilt. It asks one narrow question. Does the defendant understand the proceedings, and can he assist his lawyers? If yes, the case moves. If no, treatment comes first until the answer changes. The federal case tracks in parallel: complaint, then indictment, then the same questions about competency and counsel. Evidence is the spine. For the state, the prosecution's outline is blunt. Surveillance video from before, during, and after the attack. Eyewitnesses in the car and on the platform, the timeline down to the minute. Officer's body cam from the immediate arrest, any forensic work on the knife if it's in evidence, the medical examiner on cause of death. The video is not everything, but it eases two classic trial problems: identity and sequence. The person in the orange hoodie who knives a seated passenger appears again on the platform, then again in handcuffs. Jurors won't be asked to construct a ghost from fragments. They'll be asked to recognize a face from moving pictures. The defense has a job the Constitution honors even when emotions don't. Test the state's story. Expect 3 pressure points. First, intent. They may argue this was a chaotic, non-deliberate act, impulsive, irrational, not the kind of considered killing that satisfies premeditation. Second, mental state. Lawyers could raise diminished capacity or pursue an insanity defense under state law, or argue mental disease or defect to blunt the specific intent requirement. That route requires experts and opens the door to the state's own psychiatrists. Third, procedure. They'll probe the arrest, the seizure of any property, and the chain of custody, not to erase the video, but to protect every inch of the record in case of appeal. The prosecution's answer to all 3 lives in the tape and the tempo. No words, no argument. Approach, draw, stab, 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 exit. If jurors conclude the attack was directed and targeted, not a flailing swing, but a controlled set of thrusts at a vital area, intent is satisfied the old-fashioned way, by what the body did. Even if the defense raises mental illness, the law allows jurors to find that a person with a disorder still understood the nature and wrongfulness of his acts. That's a high-stakes factual question answered through experts and common sense. The federal courtroom will look similar but speak in its own grammar. The U.S. attorney will keep it spare. The system is a mass transportation system. The act was willful. It caused death. Video plus, the transit agency's records check those boxes. The defense may challenge willfulness if they argue a break with reality so profound that purpose collapses. But federal jurors will watch the same frames. A blade opened, driven into a neck, a walk-off that looks like calculated flight. Willfulness, the government will say, is written in those choices. What about motive? The case may go to verdict without one. The law doesn't require why. It requires who, what, where, when, and with what state of mind. If prosecutors have nothing beyond no known connection, they won't pretend otherwise. Jurors convict without motive every day when intent is obvious and identity is nailed down. Then there's the video itself, a character in the case, whether anyone likes it or not. Jurors will be warned that cameras can flatten context and narrow the frame. Defense counsel may slow the footage, point out what we can't see, and argue that people on scene reacted in a way that suggests confusion about what happened. Prosecutors will remind them the camera sits above the action and misses nothing essential: the hand, the knife, the strikes, the collapse, the exit, the arrest. After evidence comes instructions, the judge's careful map telling jurors how to convert impressions into law. In state court, expect definitions of premeditation, deliberation, malice, specific intent, insanity if raised, and the admonition that sympathy must not replace proof. In federal court, expect the elements of Section 1992, the definition of mass transportation system, and a reminder that the government must prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Sentencing sits out beyond a verdict like weather. In state court, a first-degree conviction makes life without parole the default. Aggravating factor practice is narrower in North Carolina than it once was. In federal court, the statutory maximum is life, with capital eligibility on the table in cases involving death. Whether the Attorney General authorizes a capital notice is a decision that passes through committees, memos, and policy. Whatever you hear before that is speculation. Either way, stacked state and federal outcomes can function as a belt and suspenders answer to a city's fear that one system alone won't express the harm. Through all of it, the human center has to hold. Court calendars name State versus Brown and United States versus Brown. But in both rooms, the first name spoken will be Arena. Witnesses will say it, lawyers will say it. A judge may say it at the end. Not for flourish, but because justice, when it's working, keeps the person first and the process second. There's a paradox to cases with video this clear. They feel inevitable. They aren't. They are built, from the operator who held the train, to the officers who ran the platform, to the detectives who pulled every angle, to the technicians who preserved the files, to the lawyers who boiled a city's grief down to elements 12 strangers can unanimously check off. When the courtroom clocks slow down and the headlines stop refreshing every hour, a city has to answer a question that doesn't fit into a press conference. What does safety mean after a stranger ended a life in 4 minutes on a train that thousands ride every day? The first answer is ritual. Candles, flowers, photographs taped to a column that commuters pass without looking away. People write notes in 2 languages because grief respects borders even if violence doesn't. English and Ukrainian, short and careful, each one a small refusal to let a name fade. Irina's co-workers tell the same short story 3 ways because they need to keep it real. She closed her shift with a smile. She clocked out. She headed for the blue line like she always did. Classmates talk about projects she wanted to finish, restorations she wanted to try, a stretch of career you can sketch in your head if you don't think too hard about how plans disappear. A boyfriend says nothing on camera and everything off camera, the way private people do when the worst thing that ever happened to them wants a microphone. The second answer is policy. Transit leaders don't get to mourn for long. They take their briefcases back to boardrooms and start drawing boxes around failures and fixes. You hear about deployment maps and shift patterns, about where officers ride and where they stand. The conversation gets practical fast. Late evening cars, staffed more densely, fare checks that double as wellness checks, a change in radio protocols so an operator can freeze a situation and route help into the right door faster. The public hears visible presence and rolls their eyes until they ride at 10 p.m. and see 2 uniforms at the far end of the car and feel their shoulders drop a little. This is what policy can do. Not erase danger, but make it weigh less on people who are trying to get home. The third answer is culture. Riders adjust in ways that don't make the news. Earbuds come out sooner. Seats change, aisle instead of window. Open sight lines instead of hiding spots. People look up more, which isn't paranoia, it's courtesy with edges. When something feels wrong, eyes meet. A head shake becomes a message. A hand hovers near the emergency intercom because muscle memory grows out of bad nights too. None of this is glamorous. It's how cities become resilient. 1,000 small habits choosing care over indifference. There's a temptation, after a crime this stark, to find one lever to pull and call it solved. More officers, more cameras, more gates, more bans. Some of those levers help, but what they can't do is substitute for the thing we hate admitting we need: each other. On the best days, public transit is a rolling social contract. You agree to sit near me, I agree to sit near you, and we both agree to behave. When that contract is broken, the system has to answer in numbers and uniforms. But riders answer it too by refusing to look away from one another. The courts keep their own pace. Paper shuffles forward, motions, evaluations, scheduling orders, until a day arrives that looks like ordinary justice in an extraordinary case. Jurors will file in, and lawyers will do their careful work translating 4 minutes of video into elements and instructions. The state will say a person chose to kill. The defense will ask whether the law should see intent where a mind might have been broken. Federal prosecutors will tell a parallel story in a larger frame. Violence on a train is not just local harm. It's an offense against the idea that a city can move without fear. Whatever the outcomes, the stacked tracks, state and federal, send a message the public needs to hear. Accountability will not depend on a single door holding. Meanwhile, the people closest to Irina have the hardest job: living. That looks like paperwork nobody should have to fill out in a second language. It looks like making food that doesn't get eaten because hunger disappears when someone's chair is empty. It looks like sitting in a quiet room and letting a memory play from before the day divided their lives. It looks like deciding what to do with their notebooks, whether to keep the last grocery list on the fridge, whether to move or stay in the same apartment, because both choices hurt for different reasons. There is no correct answer. Grief is not a test. The conversation about motive will keep floating around the edges because people like tidy boxes. There may never be one. Why? Is a question the law is not required to answer. It will focus instead on who, what, where, when, and with what state of mind. That can feel cold. It's also how we keep justice from turning into theater. If experts testify about a diagnosis, a jury will hear them. If the state shows that the choices of a hand and a blade meet the definition of intent, a jury will hear that too. Between those poles is the human truth we all live with. Most of the time, we don't get a narrative that makes pain make sense. We get accountability, and then we get the work of carrying on. Carrying on looks like this: a transit operator going back to the cab the next night because the city still needs to move. An officer who ran that platform walking another car, scanning faces in a way that is calmer and sharper than before. A teacher marking a chair with a small star and not explaining why. A stranger placing sunflowers by a station sign because sunflowers belong to 2 countries now. A meeting where Irina's Law is mentioned, not as a slogan, but as a shorthand for a cluster of improvements no one gets credit for because success will be measured in nothing happening. It also looks like refusing to let a life be summarized by a crime. Say what she loved, repeat the little things. She liked to cook, and she did it like a student. Extra herbs, extra salt, always adjusting. She learned the transit map faster than she learned street names. She took pictures of murals and sent them to friends who needed color across an ocean. She worked hard at a job that leaves you smelling like flour and heat. She didn't complain. She laughed in a way that made other people look up, the way good laughter does. Those facts matter because they build a longer sentence than the one a courtroom will read, and lives should be remembered with long sentences. In time, the station will go back to being a station. People will hurry to trains carrying coffee and fatigue. The doors will chime the way they always have. But if you ride late, you'll notice small edits that this case wrote into the script. Another uniform on the platform, a tighter choreography between cars, passengers, who sit with intention. Those are not monuments, they're living memorials. They say without speeches, that the city learned something and kept it. If you pass through that place, you don't need to stop. Just look up for a second. Notice the light on steel. Notice how many strangers are keeping a promise to act like neighbors. And say her name in your head the way you'd touch a railing as you take the stairs. Not dramatic, just steady. If you want true cases told without sensationalism, with the victim at the center, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next episode. In the comments, honor her name, Irina Zarutska. Share responsibly. Your support helps us keep making careful, respectful storytelling.